From Team, I'm Madison McGregor, and this is Mind Time with Madison. Today we're talking about preserving your mental well-being with DJ, singer, songwriter, and mental health advocate Anna de Ferran.
Hi guys. It's so nice to be here, Madison. Just a bit about myself. I'm 25. I've been on my mental health journey for probably just under 10 years now. I live between London and Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And yeah, as Madison said, I'm a DJ, singer, songwriter. I don't even know. I could probably add to that list, but those are the key three. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and I'm so excited to share you with Team. So we're gonna get to it. So for our audience, can you kind of describe your journey into the world of mental health, where it all started, and how you kind of started on that mental health journey?
Yeah, so I guess my mental health journey must have started when I was little, because in a way, I think even if you have good mental health, like everyone starts their journey when they're born because everything shapes the way we are. But I started struggling with mental health right around the time that I was about to graduate high school. And it was kind of the first time in my life where things weren't certain. You know, up to that point when you're in high school, your parents have chosen what school you're going to go to. They've chosen where you're going to live. The school system has chosen what you're going to study. And it was kind of that point in life where I was like, oh my God, I need to make a major decision. And it got me into reflecting, why am I freaking out so much about this sense of uncertainty? And I was so lucky that my school and my parents and my friends were able to provide me with so much support. And that's kind of when I started looking into the state of my mental health, which is something that had never really crossed my mind before, maybe because it had never bothered me before. But that sense of uncertainty about my future just triggered this whole chain of reactions. It was like a ticking time bomb that I didn't even know existed. So yeah, I guess it definitely started around the time that I was graduating high school. So like 16, 17, around then.
It sounds like a very relatable situation. Like, I know I've been there too, and excuse me, and something about high school and just like that uncertainty, like you were saying, it's just comes out of nowhere.
It really does.
What did you do, and what did your support network do that really helped you get through that time?
So at that time, I was actually at boarding school, and I was lucky that they had a system of different therapists, really. So I started with cognitive behavioral therapy, which kind of lays out the problems. Like, it's a very practical form of therapy. It's like, okay, this is what you're worried about, like this, and this. And I did a lot of work with like red light, green light, yellow light. So we kind of tried to rate the different problems and how we were going to tackle them and which ones needed to be tackled first. And that was my first experience of therapy. And it was helpful for a lot of things. One of them being like, where am I going to go to college? Like, I was lucky enough when I grew up that I lived between America and England, and I was at boarding school, but my parents were traveling all the time because of my dad's job. So I kind of had friends all over the world. But I didn't have a choice of where I went to school because my parents decided, And then, when I was there, I was like, oh my God, I need to make this big decision. And that cognitive behavioral therapy really helped me, pros to cons. It was all about lists and being really, really practical about these things. And sometimes you have to do that. Like, I'm all for like your emotions should guide you and you should try and harness like your inner intuition and all that stuff. But sometimes you really just need that this is black and this is white and you're going to pick one or the other, Yeah, I mean, I was lucky that I had that support system at my school, and I'm lucky that my parents were there to listen to me, and I had a boyfriend at the time who was really, really sweet. And all my friends, we were all living together. So we all created this support system. And while maybe not everyone understood what I was going through, a lot of people were experiencing that type of feeling in different ways at the same time, because we were all about to graduate. And so that was my support system.
It sounded like everyone kind of had this shared experience all together, like kind of just going through it together, and it really helped a lot. And what made you passionate about mental health?
I think what made me passionate was, one, how I saw it transform my own life. But two, like, no one really spoke about it. And I think I love this movement now that people are starting to talk more and more about it. There's still a long way to go. But when I was still in high school, it wasn't really a thing that we would speak about so much. And as I was going through all these things, I had the support. Like, no one wasn't friendly or like talkative about it, but it wasn't something that was brought up. So I think I really became passionate when I noticed when I was talking about my mental health problems, because like, I'm a very open person. I'm very extroverted. I don't care what people know about me, what I say. I say some really stupid things sometimes, and sometimes I say some great things. And I was starting to open up about these things, and people were really responding. And that kind of just fed my passion for it, because so many people have so many great anecdotes and stories and situations to share that we can all learn from. And I just want to be part of the movement of people that are allowing other people to open up about that, to help people that might be a little too scared to open up about it. And I think that passion has just grown over time, that, you know, there wasn't one thing that was like, oh my God, like I'm in love. It was a slow love that kind of built up from my experiences and then hearing everyone else's.
And it sounds like there's this real ensemble feeling, like being a part of this movement that brings that kind of ignites that passion and spark for you. And speaking of passion and spark, you're a very creative person. And what role has creativity played in your mental health and just in your well-being in general?
So creativity is like a two-edged sword, in my opinion. And it's funny because I was actually talking to two of my friends the other day. One of them is a writer and one of them is a fine art photographer. And we were just comparing notes, and especially at a time like this where a lot of creative work, I'm not going to say has stopped, but for example, in the music industry, like I haven't been able to travel and co-write with people. Like DJing is obviously not happening at all right now unless you're doing live streams. For writers, it's a great time to sit and write, but sometimes there's just so much pressure because there's nothing going on. So you're like, oh my God, I have to write. And sometimes you can't create, you know, creativity is not an on-off switch. And for those who have figured out how to do that, please share your wisdom. But I feel like creativity helped me in some ways because I was able, you know, my mind has always been my tool, and I was able to create visualizations that helped me with some of my meditations. I was able to create some sacred spaces in my mind, but also like in my room, for example. Like I have a little corner that was like my safe space. It has lots of salt lamps and lots of cute things, and, you know, like I've created this little space. And I think that my creativity to even think of doing that, for example, or being able to create these ideas in my head has helped me in that way. And I've always had that outlet of songwriting, which I think outlets are very important. And they don't always have to be this big creative thing. Like it can be cooking, it can be reading a book, it could be anything. For me, it's songwriting, and that's something that I've really harnessed and is a release for me. But at the same time, sometimes I think creative people get so stuck in their own minds that it can actually be to their detriment. And that's something that I've had to learn how to control, because, for example, when I'm writing a song and I want to go to a really dark place that I've been to try and relate it to other people, like that's not a great place to travel back to, because it can bring up a lot of old things that you have to deal with, or that maybe you didn't deal with properly the first time. And I know from my friends that they have the same kind of experiences. And so that's not always great if you're not ready to kind of deal with digging up those emotions. So creativity has, I'm going to say overall, it's been a positive. And I truly do believe that, because without creating and getting that out to the world, I think it would be stuck inside me. But I do think there is something to be said about being able to learn how to control your creativity and being able to process certain emotions that it might bring up.
I love how, well, many things of what you shared. I really love how you talk about creative outlets and how it's not just like you actually can be creative about the creative outlets. Like it can be cooking or organizing your room. Like that is still being creative and expressing yourself, which is, I just think, so beautiful. And also with regards to going to that dark place, being an actor, I know I like when you talked about like going to that dark place, and I totally relate to that. And how have you been able to know and kind of suss out like, okay, maybe I'm ready to go back into this, maybe I'm not, or maybe or is it just something like you kind of just figure it out in the moment?
Oh, I mean, I still haven't properly figured that out. I'm not sure if you have. Sometimes I think I'm ready to go back there and I go and I'm like, oh my God, why am I here? Why am I here? Get me out, get me out, get me out. I think it's just a trial and error, to be honest. And I don't have the perfect formula. I know when I am in like a writing space and I bang out a bunch of songs, sometimes that whole week I'm just a little down and quiet, but that's also okay. Like I've also come to learn to accept these things, because I think when you try and force yourself out of how you're feeling, even if it's kind of your fault because you've gone back to that place, I think it's just important to accept that you feel that way, and it's okay. And it's okay if you don't want to go see your friends, and it's okay if you don't want to do anything, but it's making sure that you're just okay with it for that moment, and you're like, okay, I'm going to feel like this now, and then tomorrow or next week I'm going to take myself out of this place. And that's a discipline that you have to learn, because otherwise you can get in this self-perpetuating circle of darkness, or like you don't want to get there. Like it's okay to visit there, but you just need to make sure it's a visit, and you leave. And for me, I leave by meditation, or going to see a friend that I know will make me happy, or maybe I'll do like a week of workout that will kind of like increase my endorphins. But you have to have something or an activity that makes you leave that space and almost like train yourself, okay, I'm going to enter it, and when I exit, I'm going to do this to exit that space. And that's how I've learned how to do it. I'm still not perfect at it, don't get me wrong, but that's how I've learned how to do it. And I'm sure like you must have a way to get yourself out of character or whatever it is you do when you're acting and trying to change over back to real life. And I think everyone has to learn their little trick.
Yeah, and I love that you say you use meditation, because I do too, and it is really helpful. I also do free writing as well, because that seems to help just get the right brain going instead of the left brain just like, can get so, can produce so much anxiety actually. And I struggle with anxiety too, and I know you have. And what do you do? Like, how does it show up in your life? And you've performed for thousands of people, like on stage, and you've traveled and done all these incredible things. How do you keep your mental health when you're doing all that stuff? How do you do it?
Oh God, that's a very loaded question. I'm going to start with anxiety. For me, it comes up in so many different ways, which I think is the same for everyone. It can be really obvious and in my face. It's like, okay, you're having a panic attack. You're really anxious right now. You can't breathe, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes it can be something so subtle where I just have like a dull headache constantly, or I feel like a little knot in my stomach, or my toes go a little bit tingly. And I think anxiety doesn't have one shape, like you can beat your panic attack and then you'll be fine. And then you can get a little stomach ache and feel numb a little bit. And anxiety wears so many masks, and you just have to be able to identify what is your body trying to tell you something. And that's how I've tried to look at it now. I used to be so angry at my body for giving me these kind of symptoms and be like, seriously, right now you're going to do this to me. Like I need to be on my game. I can't be like so out of it because I internalizing. And then I just realized that actually I can't get angry at myself because it's just going to make it worse. So I've just learned to think of it like it's my body trying to tell me something, and you have to decipher whether whatever you're doing that's triggering your body to act like that is worth it or not. So for example, when I go out on stage or something, I am so nervous. Like all my people that know me will say like 30 minutes before, like I can't speak. Like I'm just, I cannot communicate with anyone. I'm just like dead silent in my own head. And sometimes I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? Like this is a horrible feeling. And then I remind myself that it's because I actually love it. Like when I'm out there, when I'm actually doing it, I'm so happy. And so that type of anxiety is worth it to me. If you're anxious because there's something that you don't think is worth the anxiety, then my advice to you would be to not do that thing unless, you know, it's a matter of life or death. But that's how I've kind of come to things. Like if I'm really anxious about something and I know that I don't have to do it if I don't want to, and I don't think that it's serving me in a good way, then I won't do it. And I'm not embarrassed to say that I won't do it because it makes me anxious. Now, I found that since I've started thinking of it like that, I've actually done more because I'm identifying that I'm having the courage to like come over that anxiety, that fear. And that to me has also been really important. But yeah, before I go on stage, or sometimes even before I go into a studio session, I can be so nervous. I like don't want to eat. Sometimes I get a really bad stomach ache. But then it kind of, anxiety can turn into adrenaline sometimes, or it can turn into this horrible spiral of tears, and you just need to learn to listen to your body really and figure out which one it is. And for me with performing, I know at the end it's positive, but there have been other things. I can't think of what comes to mind right now, but there have definitely been other times where I've been like, you know what, this isn't worth what I'm feeling. My dog's growling at me. Sorry.
They want to be part of the interview too. It sounds like you've had this amazing theme of choice in your life, and how it's just, you don't let that anxiety stop you. And I love that so much, and how it's, and also too, how you have boundaries and you're like, you know what, sometimes I'm not going to do this. And it's so empowering to hear that you do that, especially as a creative person, because it feels hard to sometimes have that boundary and say, you know what, I can't do this right now, and that's okay. Yeah, it just sounds like you have such a great level of acceptance there that you've developed and cultivated. Would you say that you, like, that's how you've done it, or?
I mean, maybe I'm sounding too positive, and I am positive, but there are definitely times where I'm just like, oh my God, I have done so many things to try and get myself out of these spaces and learn how to deal with getting into these spaces, and I still keep coming back. Like I thought I beat this anxiety, I was fine, and then all of a sudden you're like, boom, a big like wave hit you on the side of the face, and you're just like, really, like, what is going on? And it sucks, and I don't want to give anyone any false hopes that like I have found a solution and it's all perfect. And I don't think anyone has, and I think anyone that's told you they have isn't being 100% truthful. I think there are definitely ways that I have learned how to come through those emotions. So I'll feel a little anxious kick, and I'll say, no, I can deal with this, and I'll do something. For me, a lot of it has to do with breathing, or removing myself from a situation, even if it's just for a minute, and just being like, I got this. And eventually you learn how to do that better. And sometimes you'll have a relapse. Sometimes I still to this day will get a panic attack, and I'm like, oh my God, why? Like I've gone through so much work on myself to like try and get over this. And sometimes it happens. And I'm a big believer of like fake it till you make it. So if you keep telling yourself that you can do this, and it's okay that you have these moments that you can't control, you just have to keep telling yourself that until you genuinely believe that it's okay and that you'll get through it. And then it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I even apply that when I'm going out on stage. It's like, nope, I got this, I'm gonna kill it. And you know, even if I don't really believe it, if you say something enough times, like you do end up kind of like feeling it in your soul. I don't know, like you get all ramped up and you're like, I got this, you know. So that's what I got for you. Fake it till you make it.
I love that. I love that so much. And I love how you said that, like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because it really is. And I know that hypnosis is something that you have done as well. I've done it too. And it's really beneficial. And I'd love to hear what that process was like for you, and what the impact it had on you as well.
Yeah, so I went through hypnotherapy, actually not for anxiety. I started going through hypnotherapy. I had a really intense phobia of needles.
Mm.
And I mean, to the point that if someone said the word needle at a dinner table, I would start crying. Like, it was really getting to the point that it was, I'm not going to say embarrassing, because I'll never be embarrassed of something that was uncontrollable, but I knew it was illogical. Like, someone saying needle is not going to hurt me or anything, but it was something I just couldn't control. And someone had suggested hypnotherapy because I couldn't rationalize my feelings. And so a lot of the cognitive behavioral therapy and stuff, it wasn't really working for me. So I started seeing a hypnotherapist close to my school in Oxford. And she really helped me work through not only my phobia of needles, which I mean, I'm still not hugely comfortable with needles, but I can give blood now, which was something that could never be done. I'd have to be knocked out, literally knocked out to give blood. And I've been able to do that. And she also, like, in doing that, because it's accessing your subconscious, she was able to work through a lot of other problems I had. So I had really bad insomnia at the time, and she really improved that. And I wish I hadn't moved away, because I've only tried 2 hypnotherapists, and one of them was my guardian angel. She really, really helped me. And the other I didn't connect with as well. So I think everyone has different experiences. It's definitely a form of therapy that I would suggest to other people, especially if they're problems or emotions that you can't really put your finger on it. Like, you don't know exactly why it is you're behaving in that way, and you can't rationalize it. And hypnotherapy is, I mean, I'm not going to say it's not rational, because to me it is, but it's an alternative form of therapy. You know, it's kind of accessing that part of your brain that meditation and is trying to access. And a lot of it actually mostly is meditation, guided meditation. But yeah, big advocate of hypnotherapy over here. And not only that, but I don't know if you had this experience, but whenever I went in and I would kind of, like, I guess, fall asleep or whatever, when I woke up after 20-30 minutes, I felt like I had the best night's sleep in the entire world. So I was like, even if you just need a little nap and you don't believe in it, like, I've tried to get my brother to go, like, selling it to him like that, and he's like, no, that kind of freaks me out. I'm like, But I loved it, and I would suggest it to anyone.
And I've had the exact same experience. It literally, I remember actually, I had some, like, tapes that the hypnotherapist gave me, and I would just, like, nap for like 20 minutes and wake up. I was like, oh, this is amazing. It feels so good.
No.
And I really appreciate you sharing too that you had 2 different, like, you went to 2 different therapists, and one didn't work and then one did, and you had that patience, because I remember when I was looking for therapists initially, and I know a lot of people have this issue where it's like, if you don't find the person right away, you're like, oh my God, is therapy gonna work? And then you kind of, anyway, I wanted to kind of give up. At that point, I was like, oh, I don't know if this is worth it. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because it is a process, like, to find that person that you connect with.
No, totally. And you need to not be afraid. And I don't think enough people talk about that. Like, finding a therapist is actually really difficult. It's like finding a boyfriend or a best friend or whatever. It's so difficult. And sometimes, like, I'm a big believer in a lot of things and a lot of energy healing and all that stuff. But sometimes I walk into these places, I'm just like, oh my God, like, this is just not for me. And I'm not that, like, cynical of a person. So I can only imagine someone who's like, it's taken them so much energy just to go to a therapist, you know, and then they kind of get there and they're like, like, what is this? And I hope those people have someone to tell them that that's normal and that you don't like it. I mean, you don't like everyone you meet. That's just natural. And a therapist is something so personal. I mean, that's like that. It really is like finding a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or it's so personal, and it is difficult. And I was lucky that my first experiences with mental health, I ended up with great therapists that I really connected with. But since then, I've had some pretty awful therapists where I almost even, I'm like, you can almost laugh about it in a way, because you're like, oh my God, like you can laugh at yourself, and that's something nice to do too. But yeah, you just got to keep the hope, and you will find someone eventually.
And yeah, it's that's like a whole other topic.
Yeah.
And how so when you were starting your career, how did you get into your career, and how did you stay positive and that persistence? Like it sounds like you really pulled that element of courage and getting over your fears and anxieties just by taking action. And I'd just love to hear more about what you went through then.
I mean, to anyone who's gonna start a career in any kind of creative field that's you kind of work for yourself, I guess, in a way, you just have to go in with a lot of courage, and you have to tell yourself that you're going to be told no so many times that I've even lost count of the amount of times I've been like, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm done. And then a week later I'll be like, no, I really miss it, like I need to go back. And I don't even know where to start on this, but it's now is the time, if you're just starting your career, like now is the time to invest your time, which is what you have on your side, into your passion. And there are going to be people that are telling you to take your life more seriously and get a real job, and there are going to be people that support you, and there are going to be people that lie to you, and there are going to be people that are honest to you. And all I can tell you is that you need to keep going until your passion isn't there anymore. And sometimes it's okay to lose your passion. That's the other thing, is you shouldn't feel ashamed that you started on one path and it didn't work out for you and you switch paths. And sometimes you might, when you switch paths, you might find there's a middle ground that you can actually incorporate the sides of both things that you loved the most. And there's always a time to get a real job. You know, if it doesn't work out for you, if it doesn't, you know, satisfy you either financially, emotionally, spiritually, whatever you're doing this for, there is, when you're at the start of your career, that's what you're so lucky. Like you have so much time, like you can stop and you can say, look, I tried, I gave it my best, but you don't want to live with the regret of not having given it a go, you know? And that's one thing that sometimes I'm like, oh my God, why am I doing this? Especially at the beginning when I was like, should I go to college? Shouldn't I go to college? Should I say yes to all these things that I don't feel like comfortable with? And, you know, I made the decision to still go to college. It did mean that I had to put like some of aspects of my music career a little bit on the back burner, but they were still there. And I will never regret that because I didn't fully give up on them. And I'm happy now that when I finished college, because that was always the plan for me, was to go back. And, you know, sometimes people are like, oh, you're 25, like, shouldn't you kind of pick? Are you a DJ? Are you a singer? Are you a songwriter? I was like, no, I don't have to pick, because I can do all three. And all three of them kind of give me this satisfaction and this sense of it just like lights a fire under you. I'm sure you have the same when you're acting, but when you have a passion, it doesn't even matter what people tell you. Like sometimes it'll get you down, but then you'll turn right back around and be like, no, like I'm doing this for a reason. And when you don't have that reason anymore, then it's okay to move on. And it's even really successful actors, actresses, singers, writers, they move on sometimes. They're like, oh no, I've done that, I've ticked that box. Like I want to start a family, or I want to write a book, or I want to start a clothing line. You know, like you can move on. And you just need to not be afraid to move on, which means you won't be afraid to start, because it's not a permanent thing. And sometimes you want to prove people wrong, all those people that are like, no, like you can't do this, so you stay in for longer than you even wanted to. But you know, the people who love you, truly love you and truly care about you, don't care if you change your mind in the next 2 hours, you know, like you could stick at it for 2 years, 10 years, 2 minutes, and they're still going to love you the same. And that's something that I've taken solace in, and just knowing that even if it doesn't work out for me, or even if I don't want to do this anymore, the people that I care about the most are still going to be there. And I think when you're starting your career, that is just such an important thing to keep in mind, and just take it step by step, because at any point in time you can leave. And that's the beauty of the world that we live in now, is that everything is so flexible. And it's something that we kind of take for granted, I think, because we get so stuck in trying to prove ourselves on social media, or even just to family friends, like, oh, this is my CV, like I have XXXYZ, like I have all this stuff. But, you know, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but it's absolute bullshit. Like, you can just do your own thing. Like, no one's going to measure you. No one's going to remember when you're 60 years old with your grandkids, whether you were 25 or 30 when you first like found success, or you first found your like your life path. Like, no one's gonna, it doesn't matter then. So you just have to look things in like the bigger picture of life, which is hard, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I can't do that, but even if you just have little moments where you're like, oh no, it's okay, I think that's really important, especially in the start of your career. And that's something that has helped me. And also knowing that, hey, if I don't want to do this crazy lifestyle anymore, that's fine. I can apply for a job, and yeah, I might not be as high up in a company as some of my friends that started working straight out of college, but doesn't mean I can't get there eventually, you know?
You said that so beautifully. And it sounds like your family and loved ones, and those people who really love and care about you, give you that big perspective on things. And I also just love how you shared that it's okay to change careers and like not want to do it anymore, and also really be in tune with your motivation, and how if you're doing it to prove people wrong, you may stay in something longer. And I totally relate to that. When I was dancing, I stopped my dance career, and I felt just so much shame around that, to go from dancing to acting and writing. Yeah, I just think that that's something that people don't talk about, or at least I haven't heard enough. So thank you for sharing that, because that is just a very empowering way to look at things. And for you, what motivates you, and how do you check in with your motivation and kind of be like, maybe I should pace myself here? Or what's that like for you?
So I mean, my family can tell you, some weeks you'll just feel motivated. Some weeks you'll be like, what the hell am I doing with my life? When I turned 25, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? Like, yeah, I have quite a few things to show for the past 25 years in life, but I feel like I should have more. And then you're like, oh my God, what have I done? I've wasted all this time. Where's my motive? Like, and your motivation's just like done. Like, you're like, I don't even want to do this anymore because I have nothing. I don't feel like I have enough to show. And then it just goes back to that point that I made, that you have nothing to prove. Like, what, I don't have to show to who? Like, who do I have to show my achievements to? It's for yourself. You're your own worst enemy. Like, you're your hardest critic. And to check into my motivation, I mean, I feel like motivation is just a feeling. Like, if you're doing something, and yeah, sometimes when I'm writing something, or if I'm making a set, I'm like, oh, this, you know, if I'm having an off day, I'm like, oh, this is so tedious. But it doesn't mean that I'm not motivated, because I mean, no one's going to be like, oh my God, this is great 100% of the time. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not reality. And whoever like acts that enthusiastically about whatever they're doing, even if they love it more than anything else in the world, like, you're never 100% like that. And if you are, like, I want whatever you're taking, because that sounds great. But you just, if there's more, I feel like it goes back to listening to your body again, actually. Like, I feel like if something's wrong and you're not motivated, you won't just feel like a little, like, I think that's probably what triggers a lot of people's anxiety, and you know, you'll feel a little sick. And actually, I listened, Goop did like a seminar the other day, as like, who should you listen to, like mind, body, spirit, or soul? And surprisingly, because I was like, oh, spirit, it's your body, because your body will never lie to you. Like, if something's wrong, like, it'll manifest in some kind of physical feeling, and it might be a subtle feeling, so you might have to really tune into it, but it might be something so obvious. And I think motivation is linked, I mean, to me it's an emotion almost, I guess, motivation, and I think it will link to somewhere in your body where it just feels wrong. And if you keep going, and sometimes it might feel a little wrong, but if you keep going and it's constantly telling you nope, 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 you should probably take that as a sign. And I don't think you can force motivation. Like, that's something that's so from the inside out. Like, there's nothing that you can't fake motivation. You can work really hard and maybe counterbalance motivation, but it's motivation, passion, almost like interchangeable for me. And I don't think that's something you can fake. You just have to listen to your body and know when you're not motivated anymore. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and the body. I love how you say how you were learning from that seminar about, like, what do you listen to? Because it's so true. Like, when I was getting involved in all this sort of stuff, in my mental health journey, I was like, I don't know, like, what's more important? And it seems like meditation really brings you back to your body and back to what is important, and back to actually where your creative fire comes from. I really love that. And how do you keep your creativity alive, especially now, especially at this time when, anxiety kind of can really be extra?
Yeah, I feel like everyone is super just anxious and just right now. I've done a few things. Like, one of the things I think that I've done is, like, found different ways to be creative. Like, I've been cooking loads, painting. And if you saw my paintings, like, I can't even draw a stick figure. But just like anything, like writing, hell, if you think you want to write a book, write a mini book. It could be awful, but who cares? It's just the way to get some one time passing, but it's something that is a good way to pass time because you're using your brain. Or even visualizations. Sit on your bed or sit on a sofa or sit outside and imagine your fairy tale story. That's something creative, and it's fun, and who knows, you might end up manifesting some of it at the same time too. I mean, when I'm really tired, like, I'll read my book a lot, and then sometimes your eyes just get tired, and I'll just sit there and I'll just start thinking up little situations and stories, and I'm like, oh, this is fun. I mean, meditation is another great way that I use to access my creativity. And sometimes, I mean, I don't know if you're religious, but whether you're religious or not, like, you can just meditate and just ask whoever you think's up there, or even if it's a person, just be like, can you just help me with my creativity right now? Just help me release some of this awful, oppressive, anxious energy that's surrounding all of us right now, because all of us honestly have no idea what's going to go on, and that's scary. Like, we're all in this place of uncertainty, and I guess also just give yourself time to sit and think. I think we're so used to, like, going all the time and filling in our time when we're not with social plans, and I'm struggling with this too, but just like sitting and not reading a book, not doing anything, just really just sitting still. And it can be outside. I like being outside at night and just like looking up and looking at the stars, and like I kind of end up like half falling asleep. It makes me really sleepy, but it's also just, it's nice to not do anything. And we're not going to have this opportunity again, maybe even, or definitely it doesn't come up very often. So just try and make the most of that, and don't feel guilty for doing nothing, which is something that I've had to keep reminding myself during this time, because sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I'm not getting enough done. Like, all these people on Instagram are doing all these challenges and they're doing all these crazy things. And I'm just like, oh my God. But then I just remind myself, like, oh no, well, I'm spending time with myself, which is kind of scary because you never normally spend as much time with yourself. But I think spending time with yourself can really unlock this creative power that we all have, by the way. Like, some people might be more in tune with their creativity, but everyone, like you said, even if you're cleaning your room, like, that you're doing something creative because you're deciding where to put that thing that you're cleaning up, and I think it's important to recognize that creativity is in everything. You just have to recognize it and feel grateful and feel that kind of bubbly feeling that releasing that creativity can give you, you know?
Yeah, oh my gosh. So you said that so well again. And I'm seeing a photo or a picture in the back. Did you draw that? The pink abstract?
Oh my god, no. My mum's goddaughter and I, this was a while ago. We got those like marbling kits from Michael's and we were playing with those. But God, that must have been 3 years ago. And she's like the cutest little girl ever. She's a singer too and she writes her own songs. And yeah, we were just playing with lots of different pinks. And I keep that up there because it reminds me that, like, also access your inner child, like do weird things, play with Play-Doh, I don't know, do something like weird and fun that you're never going to do again because you haven't done it for so long, but now's the time. Coloring books, I don't know, all that stuff. But yeah, no, we did that together. I wonder if we still have some of that stuff.
Sounds like fun, and that's really beautiful abstract painting.
Thank you.
What is next for you and your mental health journey?
I mean, I guess it's just the same as most people. It's just continuing to figure myself out, like find different things out about myself, learning to deal with those parts, continuing to meditate, keep going down that path, you know, and everyone's path is going to have ups and downs and lefts and rights, and you've just got to learn to take it all in, which is hard, easier said than done, but I'm just going to keep going, keep figuring myself out.
One step at a time.
Exactly.
And where can people find you online?
So I mostly just use Instagram, and that would be at Anna de Ferran, so ANNADEFERRAN. Message me, connect with me, but yeah, Instagram is where I'm at.
Awesome, sounds good. And you guys watching, thank you so much for being here and making it to the end of this video. And if you want more info on kind of expanding from what we talked about today, visit Team, www.myteam.org for more mental health resources. And check out Anna. She's awesome. I can attest to that. Her Instagram's absolutely wonderful, and she shares some really great things. I actually remember just a quick story. I think there was a day where your DJ equipment broke or something like that, and you documented the whole thing. And I was watching, I was like, oh my God, like you were so inspiring to me, because I was like, just the way you handled the situation, I was like, I would have been freaking, like it just, I can't even imagine the whirlwind of emotion and everything that must have gone on for you at that time.
We don't want to go there right now.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much, Anna, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.